Hey everyone, it's your buddy back again with another exciting fanfic, which is what if Naruto and Sakura became the next Sannin and fell in love part 2. If you enjoy this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more fanfics like this. Now, let's dive right into the fanfic. Are you sure you have time to be doing this, Sakura-chan? Kabuto asked. Despite his complete concentration on running away as nimbly as possible from the irate Sannin, he had still received several glancing blows resulting in substantial damage to his body. Unlike the aging and at the time handicapped Tsunade, his current opponent was at the peak of her prime and far beyond his ability to even run away from reliably. Trust me, this isn't going to take much longer, Sakura replied. Although, if you told me where Orochimaru's new base is, I might forget about you for a few minutes. You shouldn't be so carefree, Kabuto said calmly as another head wound began to pour blood down his face. You new Sannin are entirely too arrogant. I suspect Naruto-kun is learning that lesson very well right now. Him learn a lesson from a simple missing nin. Sakura scoffed. Did you seriously think that Orochimaru-sama would be keeping tabs on an ordinary person? Kabuto retorted. Of course, that abominable a man is constantly searching for hosts, Sakura replied. Which is why I said you children are too arrogant, Kabuto repeated. The man I was following is a traitor to the rock named Atsushi. He recently joined Akatsuki. Sakura sprang back from her close pursuit of Orochimaru's most loyal henchman and weighed her options quickly. There was a good chance that Kabuto was deceiving her, but if not, then Naruto was facing a ninja good enough to become a member of Akatsuki. Such a matchup was one of the worst possible for Naruto because of the liability he carried as a result of that organization's vast knowledge about the tailed demons. Kabuto's smile turned to a wince of pain, but he was still quite relieved that the pink-haired predator decided to let him slip by one more time. Even better, regardless of whether Akatsuki lost its newest member or the Sannin decreased by one, Orochimaru would be very pleased indeed. Sakura strained to cover all the distance that she had put between herself and Naruto since the tip they had been following led them to the location where Kabuto had been shadowing the now identified former rock ninja. Her anxiety increased when she felt immense amounts of chakra being expended from the position where she had left Naruto. A large section of the forest had been reduced to a twisted smoking wreck that only became more damaged the closer she got until there was nothing more than a great clearing burned down to fine powder and dust. Neji, what happened? Sakura asked when she spotted the injured form of the Hyuga that had accompanied them on their information-gathering mission. Where's Naruto? He saved me, Neji replied, coughing. With considerable exertion he activated his Byakugan while Sakura healed him as much as she could and helped him stand up. His finger pointed. There, he's just below the surface. Sakura worked rapidly and deliberately to get Neji into a position where she could continue to monitor him before digging into Naruto's location. Even though her heart was trying to pry its way out of her throat as a result of the chafing delay, her medical training insisted in doing things properly. Neji, tell me everything that happened, Sakura said again, this time with more urgency as she began brushing away the soil where Neji had indicated Naruto was buried. I need to know exactly what kinds of techniques were used on him. Mostly blunt trauma, Neji began. Sakura's sharp gasp cut him off. Even a medical nin as experienced as she couldn't help but feel physical revulsion at the state Naruto was in. Naruto, Sakura said emotionally. He was covered with severe burns over almost all of his body. His clothes had been scorched so badly that even the fire-resistant material had melted into his skin. Only the shallow movement of his chest prevented Sakura from breaking down entirely at the sight. And fire, Neji whispered unnecessarily. He pursed his lips, unsure of what he should do or even feel as Sakura frantically began pumping wave after wave of healing chakra into Naruto's torso. What happened? Sakura demanded loudly, her voice nearly breaking. His opponent was some guy named Atsushi, Neji said softly. I thought we had taken him by surprise. Sakura-chan, you take Kabuto, Naruto said. Even though he could fight against medical ninja techniques, Sakura was a more overpowering match against the former spy. We'll see what's so great about this guy he was shadowing. Naruto and Neji proceeded to take up stealthy positions overlooking a small clearing in the underbrush where the missing nin had made his camp. It appeared to be a mature camp, which meant that the man had likely been there for several days doing something. Neji analyzed the situation with his Byakugan and motioned to Naruto that he was going to go in for a surgical attack. Naruto looked unsure, but after a moment of hesitation nodded for him to go ahead. The Hyuga fighting style that enabled him to disable chakra utilization should have made short work of their opponent. Neji dropped down next to the burly rock ninja and rapidly delivered dozens of pinpoint blows. He had just completed his attack when a large beefy arm swung around and sent him sprawling into a nearby tree. "Punk, what do you think you're doing so suddenly?" his deep voice asked. In a flash he pounced, his speed much greater than anything one would have expected from a person so short and stout, pummeling Neji with several short sharp blows. Without warning, Naruto's leg flew in from the side and connected with his chin. "Ah, I was wondering when you'd come out," he said. "I've been waiting to meet you. What do you think you're doing so close to Konoha?" Naruto demanded. "Allow me to introduce myself," he drawled. "The name's Atsushi. You were a member of the Rock's elite home guard," Naruto said. "What do you want here?" "You heard of me. I'm flattered," Atsushi replied. "As for what I want, I'm just here to tell you that Itachi says, hello. Oh, and I've got business with that fox you're carrying around too, if you'd be so kind." "So Akatsuki is recruiting again," Naruto said dryly. "I guess you know I can't let you leave this place alive, right?" Atsushi stretched lazily, his movements causing a thin outer skin of hard rock that had been damaged in protecting his chakra circulatory system from Neji to peel off of him only to be replaced by more. The rock and soil kept collecting until he was covered completely with a very tough shell bristling with razor-sharp edges. "Naruto, you've got to hold on," Sakura said desperately. She had strengthened some of his internal organs, but none of his wounds were healing. Even worse, she couldn't find any of his red chakra anywhere and he seemed to somehow be resistant to her healing techniques. Neji noticed that Naruto was in even worse shape than he had first believed. Now that he was above ground, the Hyuga prodigy could see that two of Naruto's limbs were twisted at odd angles, denoting multiple fractures. Neji tried to leap back into the battle only to receive a series of devastating blows that left him barely able to move and undoubtedly bleeding from wounds both internal and external. "Stay back," Naruto said. His hands were flashing through seals as he tried to counter the powerful earth techniques that Atsushi was employing against them. Wind and water chakra merged together with fire to blast the bulky missing nin with a jet of steam that should have blistered skin. Instead, he nimbly avoided most of it and absorbed what hot vapor managed to land on him. "Even lightning can't pierce this armor," Atsushi said boastfully. Naruto formed seals and performed his shadow clone technique. Against a heavy-hitting guy like this, he would need to do some experimentation without having to take every blow himself. Clones were destroyed rapidly as Naruto sent in wave after wave in an attempt to find some kind of weakness that he could exploit. Long ago Naruto would have charged in himself, but his experience led him to believe that Atsushi was holding back a few surprises, and as such it wouldn't do for Naruto to show his own hand. After all of Naruto's clones were gone except for a few, the blonde Sannin himself joined in the battle. He had to exert a great deal of chakra to block Atsushi's blunt attacks with the metal strips running along his forearms, though the power behind them were still lesser than one of Sakura's punches. The downside was that Atsushi's armor was composed up of very sharp rocks that dug deep into his flesh every time he blocked a blow. With a burst of chakra and some swift hand movements, Naruto danced around Atsushi without getting hit. In the process, he managed to attach several exploding tags to the burly man's external coating of rock. "Useless," Atsushi intoned self-assuredly as Naruto leapt away and formed a single seal to trigger the tags. Multiple explosions ripped into Atsushi before sweeping a thunderclap of concussive pressure across the battlefield. The dust kicked up by the blast hadn't even begun to dissipate when a rain of shards burst out of it, with Atsushi following on the heels of his attack. Naruto fell back as the stone ripped through his body an instant before a granite fist slammed fully against his jaw. His belly swelled up unnaturally as he began molding chakra for another attack. There was a hiss and a bellow of pain as toad acid inundated Atsushi's armor, where it seeped down through small cracks to his flesh below. Rasengan, Naruto yelled, concentrating as much chakra as possible into the spiraling sphere he held in each hand. The weakened armor of rock protecting Atsushi was shredded rapidly by the tremendous concentration of forces Naruto wielded. The newest Akatsuki member was sent spinning away, his body digging a jagged trench through the ground. Sakura, it isn't working anymore, Neji said forcefully. I've got to save him, Sakura replied calmly. She had forced down her emotions in an effort to ensure that her chakra control was flawless. But it isn't helping, Neji repeated. I can see his chakra pathways, they're all still blocked. They shouldn't be blocked, I reopened them with my own chakra, Sakura insisted. It's a poison, Neji said. Even you can't stop it like this. You need to get him back to Konoha. There's no time, Sakura said sharply. Sakura, you've got to take him now or he'll die, Neji yelled. Shut up. I won't let him die, Sakura yelled back, her eyes wet. This isn't good, Naruto muttered. Atsushi had gotten himself under control again after climbing back onto his feet and was forming more hand seals. I should have expected this to be necessary against one of Konoha's Sannin, Atsushi said. His bluster was gone, but a cold methodical fury had replaced it. Naruto too formed hand seals as he mixed chakra and inhaled deeply. He bent forward at the waist and blew out a thin stream of white-hot flame toward Atsushi's immobile form. For a moment he exulted as the fire washed over his opponent seemingly unopposed, but he quickly realized that the apparent success of his attack was much too convenient against an enemy of Atsushi's ability. You're pretty unlucky, kid, Atsushi said. The flames, instead of dying down, seemed to be intensifying and taking shape around Atsushi. You became my target and then you made me use this technique. I've heard 1,000 ninja threaten me with their ultimate skill, Naruto replied dryly. This is the last time, I promise, Atsushi said darkly. The rock clinging to him was glowing red now and putting off steam as it began to move like thick syrup. Naruto, realizing that his position was getting worse by the moment, rushed in and attempted to land some more blows, but the heat drove him back. He leapt away, throwing projectiles and elemental techniques as rapidly as possible. Everything melted away with a burst of flame before it could get anywhere near the lava-covered man. All your attacks are useless, Atsushi said. Surrender now and save yourself some pain. Naruto found himself wishing for the first time that he knew some genjutsu instead of merely ways to resist it. Most fire could be overcome, but the mixing of fire and earth chakra in such a manner. Kekkei Genkei, Naruto said flatly as realization struck him. Correct, Atsushi said, his voice rough. The molten rock was flowing freely now all over his body. I have both an absolute defense and attack in this form. In this world there are no absolutes, Naruto replied. His hands began to flash rapidly through seals. I have a sort of blood inheritance limit of my own. Impossible, Atsushi said wonderingly. Red chakra was boiling out and forming an avatar of a multi-tailed fox over Naruto's body. No one had informed him that this demon container could perform such a feat on purpose by using a technique. I see, he used that technique, Sakura said softly. Neji was startled when she hefted him onto her back effortlessly, securing him there with a wire binding. With great care she picked up Naruto and then leapt away from the battlefield back toward Konoha. I assume that he was poisoned while in that form, right? Yeah, Neji confirmed. He couldn't see Sakura's face, but he was able to see a bit of moisture falling on Naruto's cheek as they rushed along with all the speed the slug Sannin could muster. Hidden technique, Naruto said. 4 tails of red chakra lashed against the ground. The demon fox was hungry and eager after being locked away for so long. Naruto licked his lips and got ready to charge. I can't wait to play. This isn't a game, Naruto growled. Atsushi looked on with amusement as his opponent seemed to argue with himself slightly. Finally, Naruto's demeanor changed as his tenant spoke again. Yes, as you wish, master. Atsushi's once solid armor reached a point of minimum viscosity and in a flash lashed out like an angry monster against Naruto, who was still completing his own technique. Red boiling chakra hissed and bubbled against molten rock. The ground beneath the two titans was vaporized from the intense energies of their techniques clashing. A great claw of red chakra raked ineffectively through the tidal wave of boiling rock that threatened to entirely encompass Naruto's position. A second claw delivered a crushing blow as Naruto tried to get in closer to his adversary. His hands flashed through more seals and two more tails dropped down. Are you sure your body can handle that? Atsushi asked. Indeed, it appeared as if the demon chakra was beginning to cause some damage to Naruto's body. His healing powers were still successfully repairing the degradation as quickly as it occurred though. Whips of glowing liquid stone lashed out only to be met by claws. As more and more tendrils tried to punch through the red chakra to burn down Naruto's body, the tails curved around to intercept them. Two more tails dropped and Naruto howled as he struggled to maintain his dominance. Curse you, Naruto said, his voice changing. To think you made me get this serious. Neji scrambled back as quickly as he could to avoid the waves of destructive heat and chakra that were washing over the area surrounding the encounter. His eyes could see that this was a very unusual battle indeed. Naruto, to his knowledge, had never used his tenet in such a fashion before and for good reason. In addition to damaging his body, the use of such a huge chakra avatar was slowing him down considerably. Against a fast opponent with a lot of chakra and force of will, the demon would be swiftly overpowered. Atsushi too was suffering from a loss of speed since he was counting on the speed, range, and power of his ultimate defending attack to win the battle for him. As a result, the two of them were perfectly suited to fight each other in those forms without either having a clear advantage. Atsushi chakra surged into another attack, the ground around him erupting to add to the onrush of superheated material. It's like Gaara, only worse, Naruto muttered. You've reached your limit, haven't you? Atsushi asked triumphantly. Can't you count? Naruto roared. He made a final set of seals and the ninth tail dropped. The form of the demon fox, which had been merely a hazy representation of chakra, seemed to take on a definite corporeal form. It let out a fierce cry of battle and lunged forward. 9 tails of burning chakra were supplemented by 4 sharp claws and a mouth full of massive rending teeth. It's not over yet, Atsushi vowed as Naruto's avatar and his technique annihilated each other. During the intensity of the attack, the physical forms of the two ninja were brought within close proximity of each other. Close enough, in fact, for them to begin exchanging blows within the swirling storm of their collision. Naruto winced visibly when Atsushi managed to latch onto him with his left hand. At that precise moment, Neji had seen with his eyes some kind of exotic chakra inhibitor spreading throughout his system. Immediately the wellspring of red chakra began to dry up. One by one the tails disappeared until Naruto's avatar evaporated with a concussive shockwave. Atsushi's technique wasn't dispelled, but it was severely diminished as they were tossed apart. Hang on, Sakura said pleadingly. She continued to use her free hand to pour revitalizing chakra into Naruto's battered form, whilst clutching him close to her with her other. That Kabuto, I'll kill him for this. If only I had been there instead of chasing him. Did you forget who that is? Neji asked softly. He won't leave you, you know. Thanks, Sakura replied gently. But you can't promise that. Even if it is him, he used all 9 tails. Just believe in him, Neji said uncomfortably. The great walls of Konoha were on the horizon. If Naruto could just hold on a little longer, his chances would magnify significantly. I do, Sakura said simply. What did you do to me? Naruto asked, wheezing as his breathing labored under the degrading effects on his body that were no longer being healed. Nothing much, Atsushi replied, also breathing heavily. I just removed your access to that annoying monster's power. You're going to regret that, Naruto said. Now I've got no choice but to use that technique. Oh, Atsushi replied. Now who's threatening who with their ultimate technique? Naruto laughed and smiled painfully at the irony. His hands started flashing through seals rapidly as he carefully planned the best way to get in close enough to deliver the finishing blow. You can't have much chakra left, Atsushi commented. He was rebuilding his fiery armor, though he didn't have enough chakra left to restore it to the state it was in before Naruto's demonic avatar ripped it apart. I have plenty of chakra, just not the right kind, Naruto grumbled. His own chakra was vast, but it couldn't heal him or shield him like the fox's chakra could. Hidden technique. Stone mannequin. Model Inferno, Atsushi said, focusing his mind and chakra into the remains of his superheated armor. A half-dozen vaguely human-shaped creatures emerged from the mass and formed a ring around Atsushi. Rasengan, Naruto called out. The whirling sphere of chakra emerged in his left hand as he moved in nimbly to engage Atsushi defenders. Model Razor Spine, Atsushi said. Piles of rubble from the shattered ground became glued together with chakra to supplement the magma soldiers that Naruto's Rasengan was demolishing. Wind Release, Naruto said, taking it up one notch. The hail of burning rocks was ground to powder along with the cannon fodder of stone puppets that Atsushi kept sending in. Too fast, Atsushi said. Naruto's form flickered out of his view for a second and another stone mannequin fell apart. For the first time he realized that Naruto was seriously overpowering him, even without his demon power. He pulled out a pill and swallowed it, grimacing as he did so. The ground around him glowed red hot and burst apart into magma to reform Atsushi's ultimate offensive defense. A dozen long thin whips of flame reached out like the tentacles of some deep-sea beast and swatted at Naruto. That would be a scary technique if you didn't have such lousy chakra reserves, Naruto taunted. You can't imagine how much power it takes to maintain, Atsushi replied. His hands formed seals hastily and a cocoon of molten rock settled over him as Naruto began to work his way through the flailing whips of fire. Naruto dodged easily on his approach, his left hand with the wind release Rasengan defending whilst he used the opportunity to channel a massive amount of chakra into his right hand. The flexible ropes of flame attacked and bent at predictable angles, plus he was channeling plenty of chakra to disperse the superheated material. Secret technique. Flowering Sakura. Model Aegis, Naruto called out. Pink-tinted chakra flowed out of his right wrist and formed a circular shield that looked as if it were made out of many tiny cherry blossom petals. It was something that he had devised with the help of Sakura, and named after her, to protect himself from the effects of his own elemental techniques based on the spiraling sphere. Wind Release. Spiraling Shuriken, Naruto said as he emerged, nearly on top of Atsushi position. The large four-pointed dome of swirling chakra emerged in full force, its edges churning within the confines of his Sakura Aegis. One more blow and it would be over. You got Circa. Why, Atsushi said sinisterly. All the ropes of flame, which had seemingly been bending and attacking in predictable patterns, suddenly converged on Naruto's position. Worse, the tips of the attacks had cooled into hardened spears of obsidian that pierced through Naruto's defenses easily. 3 of the now stiff tendrils applied pressure on Naruto's left arm in 3 different directions, snapping it brutally. Another wrapped around one of Naruto's legs before morphing into rock and contracting with enough force to turn bone into powder. So did you, Naruto replied, teeth gritting through the pain. Even as he was run through multiple times he still managed to thrust his right arm with its devastating attack into Atsushi's not-so-ultimate defense. The magma was blown off of Atsushi's body in an instant, though he tried to dodge. Naruto looked into Atsushi's eyes, which were wide with shock, as his technique ripped the man's body apart and released his control over the large amount of magma that still surrounded them. The combined forces of Naruto's technique and his loss of control resulted in a large fireball that sent out a shockwave decimating the surrounding terrain with scorching heat. Sakura, Naruto said feebly. Naruto, You're awake, Sakura said. Just stay quiet. Don't move, we're almost to the hospital. Naruto noticed at that point that they had already entered Konoha and were racing along the rooftops with as much speed as Sakura could manage. I'm sorry I made you worry, Naruto said, disobeying her. His injuries were far worse than they should have been. I was careless. Naruto, Sakura said, her heart lifting, though she was still very concerned and would be until the poison suppressing his healing abilities was lifted. Sakura-sama, is Naruto-sama and Neji-san going to be alright? An Anbu captain and his squad dropped down in an escorting formation as they neared the hospital. I think so, Sakura replied. But I want you all to be on guard and send someone to inform the Hokage immediately. Konoha needs to go on alert in case Akatsuki tries to finish what it started. Naruto-sama was attacked by Akatsuki. The Anbu repeated, his concern magnifying. They landed together on the roof of the hospital and watched as Sakura rushed inside to begin healing her 2 charges. It was some time later before Tsunade was able to make it to the hospital. As soon as she received word about the incident with Akatsuki, she had dispatched her home guard to secure the village while she and Jiraiya had scouted the region for high-level enemy ninja. With half of their elite attack force out of commission, she couldn't even spare herself to go visit her apprentice during the first crucial hours of preventing an infiltration or attack in the chaos of the young Sannin's return. Fortunately, it seemed that for whatever reason Akatsuki had acted with a single agent this time, or perhaps their agent had acted on his own without orders for some reason. Jiraiya would probably uncover the details eventually. How is he? Tsunade asked one of the attendant medical ninja who was stationed outside Naruto's room. Sakura-sama's treatment seems successful, the medical ninja replied. The demon fox had been completely suppressed along with Naruto-sama's ability to access its powers. Once Sakura-sama began the treatment, his worst wounds began to disappear though. That's a relief, Tsunade said, breathing out. Hokage-sama, Sakura-sama asked not to be disturbed, the medical ninja said when Tsunade made a move to enter the room. Just a peek won't hurt, Tsunade replied. She looked in and saw Naruto sleeping peacefully. Sakura was in a chair next to him with her arms around him snugly. Her head rested on his chest while she too slept. You've surpassed me in every way now, Sakura-chan, Tsunade thought as she watched the two. You saved him. You saved the person that I wasn't able to all those years ago. Hand over anything you have that might identify your village affiliation, Maborosi said. It had taken his squad a day of hard running to reach the border of the Fire Country after their new orders had arrived. Now they stood ready to infiltrate the Leaf, but if their mission failed they couldn't risk the retaliation that would surely come just for what they were about to attempt. Maborosi watched carefully as his underlings removed their headbands and other distinctive bits of equipment that, while not critical to their current mission, would nonetheless make their village affiliation readily apparent. This would be a dangerous mission for his team, even though their target had a weakness. That weakness only served to make this mission possible, not easy. The Leaf is soft, Kurai replied. Kurai was the squad's most lethal fighter, but she always kept a low profile to prevent herself from becoming famous since she believed fame could interfere with a ninja's ability to carry out their duty. Killing one wounded demon won't be a challenge for us. Even the softness of the Leaf has been tempered into a hard edge, Bodai said softly. Bodai was the team's strategist, though he was mostly just observant about human nature. I agree with Bodai, Kanmari said. The fourth member of the squad, Kanmari, remained a bit of a mystery even to his teammates. He probably wasn't as strong as Kurai, but he was skilled and crafty. A ninja's ninja in all respects of the word and a master of all 3 ninja arts. Even though the demon is wounded, he will be well guarded by the remaining Sannin. The Hokage's first duty is to protect the village. She will be too tied down to interfere, Kurai said disdainfully. The old man is well past his prime and the other Sannin can't win against all of us even in a fair fight. By all accounts Konoha's new medical genius is every bit as impressive as her master, Maborosi cautioned. She passed the Sannin's trial after all. That's hardly a feat, Kurai retorted. Regardless, we should avoid confronting her if possible, Bodai said calmly. If anyone discovered that you had defeated a Sannin, you would become quite famous after all. Bodai's point caused Kurai to let out a grunt of dissatisfaction, but it ended all protests against avoiding combat by the ninja who valued stealth above all else. Kurai hated fame, especially the kind of fame that the Sannin had amassed for themselves. Hailed as heroes or villains, the Sannin were Konoha's shining accomplishment in ninja talent, envied by the other hidden villages. The three of you will follow my lead, Maborosi said. He valued the input of his team, but in the end he made sure that everyone recognized the chain of command was a straight line ending with him. With a gesture of his hand, Maborosi's team dispersed across the border leading into the core territory of the Leaf. They would move at top speed in tight formation without contacting each other, and assuming that they evaded all patrols, a likely occurrence, they would not regroup until they were ready to infiltrate the great walls of their target. A few hours from now, the Leaf's burgeoning military power would be cut short, and other, worthier villages such as their own would again reclaim the prominence they deserved. Naruto awoke with a start after what had felt like days of drifting in and out of consciousness. Almost immediately he felt a slight pressure on his chest, which he noticed was caused by Sakura's head resting there with her pink locks scattered in every direction. His movements must have jarred her because she began to stir slightly. Naruto, are you really awake? Sakura asked as she sat up sleepily. As the situation became clear to her, she began running her hands across Naruto's chest an inch or two above him so as to best utilize her medical techniques in assessing his condition and aiding his recovery with finely tuned chakra. Sakura, Naruto mumbled in reply. As his memories came rushing back, he realized that he was in Konoha's hospital. You saved me, Sakura. Thank you. The soft press of Sakura's lips against his own silenced whatever else he was going to say. For a long moment they remained still and quiet as they basked in each other's presence. Baka, what are you thanking me for? Sakura replied. If you weren't out there for everyone else, for me, then you wouldn't get into such situations. I'm the one that should be thanking you. You know you never have to thank me for anything, Sakura-chan, Naruto said as he looked up at her fondly and smiled. If it's for you, then I don't mind. Sakura looked at him restlessly and felt herself growing increasingly uneasy as the moments ticked by with her gaze affixed on him. For a long time they had danced around their relationship. Naruto had stopped asking her for dates and telling her that he cared for her because at the time it had made her so obviously uncomfortable. She knew he hadn't moved on though, especially during times like these when his feelings for her seemed to manifest themselves to her despite being unvoiced. Of course, if she were honest with herself, their interactions had slowly taken on all the characteristics of a relationship. Indeed, Sakura reminded herself, they even kissed. Usually her kisses were playful, but sometimes, such as just now, they carried more tenderness and affection. Are you okay, Sakura-chan? Naruto asked. Sakura's emerald eyes focused on him as she took his hand into her own and squeezed it gently. I'm just glad you're safe, Sakura replied, hugging him tightly again as she found herself at a loss for words. I'm sorry I made you so worried, Naruto said softly. He stroked her hair gently and wished that he could pour out all of the words that he had long wanted to tell her, but refrained out of a desire not to hurt her. He had decided that after the traumatic experiences they had endured, it was best not to push her. Naruto wasn't interested in anything less than Sakura's true feelings and their lives, as ninja had encouraged them to suppress such things, not only through training, but through bitter experience. My true feelings, Sakura thought to herself as she continued the prolonged embrace. A memory returned to her, unbidden. The strength of my feelings. Don't apologize, it's a worry that I want to have, Sakura said aloud. She drew back and smiled down at Naruto. Sakura, Naruto said, his expression one of slight puzzlement. Naruto, this has made me think about something that I've avoided for a long time, Sakura said. What is that, Sakura? Naruto asked. He moved his hand reassuringly to Sakura's forearm even as his own heart felt like it was about to seize up in his chest from the intense emotions that rushed to the surface as he perceived Sakura's intent. It's made me think about myself, and about you, Sakura said haltingly. More importantly, it's made me think about us and how much you mean to me. About how much I care about you, and what it would feel like if you weren't here anymore. Sakura berated herself inwardly as she felt her emotions begin to flow around her self-control, causing tears to come to her eyes as she spoke her heart. She smiled weakly as Naruto tried to soothe her by patting her forearm encouragingly and actually succeeded. His eyes told her more than volumes of words. Don't make me say everything, Sakura said finally. You know my feelings for you haven't changed, Naruto said quietly. He left off the words, since we were genin, because of all the regrets they still carried from that era. You know I love you Sakura, that I've always loved just you. Naruto's actions had always been the proof of those words and those feelings. Sakura embraced him tightly again for a moment before drawing back enough so that her shimmering emerald eyes could look fully into his clear blue ones. I love you too, Naruto, Sakura said evenly. All the emotions, thoughts, and experiences of the past few years had come together at some point, she wasn't sure when, to produce this new feeling that she had for her old friend. It was a feeling, she realized somewhere in her subconscious, that she had never had for anyone else before, and some part of her wasn't at all surprised by that. Even if she were used to Naruto's normal cheerful expression, Sakura was overwhelmed at the sheer radiant look that graced his visage now. She had always known to some extent that she possessed an ability, or rather that he had for some reason given her the ability, to make him happy with even the slightest favorable gesture. In retrospect, Sakura realized that at some point she had accorded him the same ability with her happiness as well. I wish this moment would never end, Naruto said contentedly. There'll be plenty of good moments in the future, Sakura said gently. She got up slowly and performed a set of very basic medical seals. For now though, you need to finish getting well. I'll be back as soon as I finish reporting to Tsunade, okay? I'll be waiting, Naruto said, grinning. Sakura dimmed the lights before gently shutting the door behind her as she left. She had not taken more than a few dozen steps down the hall until the floor in front of her started to shimmer as a concealing technique began to reveal the ninja it concealed. Greetings Naruto-sama, Maburoshi said with feigned politeness as his form took shape. Excuse me, Sakura replied. Are you some kind of weirdo? You continue to maintain your reputation for flawless transformation techniques, Maburoshi said. Even in Naruto's weakened state, he knew better than to attack him hurriedly. First he would analyze his prey. But I'm afraid that this time you made a critical error. Oh, and what error was that? Sakura asked dryly. I was pretty sure I hit all those seals correctly. You even managed to get the effect of the technique, Maburoshi replied. But that's what one would expect of a Sannin, weakened or not. So what was it then? Since you seem to be so proud of yourself, Naruto asked. He let his pink-haired disguise puff away. It was just a lucky guess, right? No, it was your walk, Maburoshi said smugly. Hey! Naruto exclaimed indignantly. I've perfected my womanly walk years ago. Exactly, Maburoshi said. She walks nothing like that. Naruto frowned, but admitted that it was possible. Sakura had long since ceased being concerned with such shallow things, and the life of a ninja didn't always lend itself to stereotypical behavior patterns. Well, congratulations, Naruto retorted. For your trouble you've won a free trip to Konoha's interrogation squad. Not today, Maburoshi said sinisterly. Today I get to bag the head of at least one Sannin and possibly two. You won't hurt Sakura-chan, Naruto replied sternly. And I like my head right where it is. Then let us see, Maburoshi said confidently. His eyes began to change and his smile revealed swiftly elongating fangs. Naruto wouldn't be able to resist his techniques and strategy. He was sure of it. A dozen blades impacted unceremoniously into lumpware. Naruto still lay back in his room. Three blurs descended seemingly from nowhere and the bed was swiftly reduced to kindling under the combined effects of several deadly techniques. What rude brats! Sakura's bodiless, directionless voice echoed from the walls. Did we interrupt your touching scene? Kurai said nastily. What kind of pathetic ninja are you anyway? Careful, Bodai said. This isn't real. I'm impressed that you could see through my technique, Sakura said. Dozens of copies of the pink-haired girl began to grow from the walls along with black tentacles that crept to and fro seemingly at random. Don't look into her eyes, Kanmari said suddenly. He pulled out a small vial and drank the contents quickly as Sakura's piercing emeralds seemed to draw on the three attackers with both command and allure. This is ridiculous, Kurai said. Her hands flashed through a dozen seals that culminated in a pulse of bright chakra that shattered many of the images closing in on the vulnerable squad. Get her. Bodai and Kanmari leapt in opposite directions, but quickly converged on the same point. Kurai continued to form seals as her two teammates clawed at empty air until they pulled Sakura out of her technique and tossed her bodily across the room. In a flash they followed her, their weapons out and stabbing rapidly while Sakura's defenses were down. Metal clashed against metal as Sakura righted herself in time to repel the attacks. Now Kurai, Kanmari yelled. He and Bodai had latched onto Sakura again, struggling to contain her strength long enough for Kurai to leap across the room and bury two kunai into Sakura's stomach. We're not out yet, Bodai said as he watched the blades sink into Sakura as if she were made of wax. He made seals rapidly as his two teammates formed up, backs facing each other, and aided his attempt to break the illusion. Let me give you a hand, Sakura yelled as she emerged at point-blank range without warning. Kanmari held his arms up in front of his comrades, but even though he took the blow all three of them were hurled through the wall and out into the yard surrounding the hospital. We're out, Bodai announced. There's some trick, Sakura muttered to herself as she analyzed the scene. She'd hit one of them with enough force to propel her fist through their flesh like a spear, regardless of chakra reinforcing, yet there they all stood completely unarmed. That was brutal, Kanmari said as he drank another set of vials. His hands flashed through several seals. She's coming, Kurai said. All three of them worked together in concert to repel the latest flurry of blows as Sakura rushed in. They had known it would be tough, but fighting a Sannin was proving to be far more difficult than they had ever imagined. Their normal techniques wouldn't even slow her down and their extraordinary techniques were not simple to pull off. She isn't using her full strength each time, Bodai observed. His words prompted the other two to realize why. In one hand Sakura had a kunai while the other was simply balled into a fist. Her armed hand slashed and thrust with great speed, forcing them to block, but her other hand was always there waiting to lash out with enough force to kill them instantly. In this way they were forced to block and dodge whilst trying to pay attention to when to do what and with how much charka. As things stood they were wasting much of their energy on Sakura's less lethal kunai just because of the difficulty in keeping up with her movements. She's trying to force us apart, Kanmari said. Sakura cartwheeled backward unexpectedly, her foot hooking on Bodai's chin to send him flying backward. Kanmari tried to close in while Sakura's back was turned, but she whirled around, her arm extended so that it swung into him like a mace to send him flying too. In the same fluid movement her other fist slammed into the ground at Kurai's feet, rupturing the earth and spraying her with debris. Kurai recovered in time to dodge Sakura's heaviest blows as she gave up ground in order to stay alive. Sakura pressed the attack, never noticing that the other two were taking up positions behind her. I can see your mind turning, Maburoshi said as he faded from view. Perhaps you have begun to realize that without your crutch you cannot hope to win. I'm just deciding what kind of retribution your village should receive for such an insult, Naruto replied coolly. And, pray tell, which village do you intend to visit your wrath on? Maburoshi asked, laughing. By the end of this fight I'll tell you, Naruto replied. He dodged a fraction of an inch and felt Maburoshi's transformed claws rake dangerously close to him. There was another sensation of slightly movement, but this time Naruto reached out and felt his fist connect with his opponent. If that's all the speed you have, then you won't be able to keep up, Maborosi said mirthfully. Naruto still couldn't see him. The corridor of the hospital had begun to fill with a black mist, and Maborosi's stealth technique rendered him invisible to the unenhanced eye anyway. Release, Naruto said, channeling a significant amount of chakra into dispelling the illusion. Wasted effort, Maborosi said. This is no illusion. Naruto said nothing in reply, but instead flashed his hands through numerous seals. 3 shadow clones appeared with their backs oriented so that they were all covering each other. The other 3 brought up their hands to mirror the real Naruto in continuing to form seals. As one, they blew out a short burst of fire that scorched its way down the hall, but failed to ignite any surface. In the midst of the mostly harmless inferno, Naruto noticed an unusual ebb in the current of the flame and immediately lashed out. Hidden technique. Jumping locus, Naruto said. At the completion of the last seal, hundreds of tiny plugs of hard material popped out of the walls, ceiling, and floor with enough force to punch holes in anything unfortunate enough to stand in their way. Several of the tiny projectiles turned to powder as a hidden assailant destroyed them. Instantly, Naruto's clones leapt into action. A clone exploded as it took too much damage, but 2 more landed punches into the space where Maborosi was hiding. Then they too burst out of existence as Naruto slashed through them with a Rasengan. Too slow, Maborosi said exultantly. Naruto felt several stiff blows land on him, but thankfully his opponent hadn't used claws or blades. He righted himself, cursing his carelessness all the while. He couldn't count on that again. Kuchio's no jutsu, Naruto said. Maborosi shimmered back into view, his eyes narrowing as Naruto was obscured from view by the puff of smoke created by the appearance of a summoning. What is he doing now? Maborosi muttered to himself. A barrier, Sakura thought frantically. As a ninja, she had seen such techniques before, but they were pretty rare. Their use as a weapon was even rarer, yet here she was trapped inside an ever-decreasing amount of space. Close it up, Kurai said through gritted teeth. The barrier was no longer decreasing in volume as much as it had previously. Sakura had begun some kind of technique and now sat on her knees in an almost meditative state as she attempted to break free of the pyramidal coffin that threatened to crush her. Kanmari let his eyes wander just enough to see how close his comrades were to reaching their limit. Maintaining the barrier against a Sannin was proving to be much more difficult than they had anticipated. His brow furrowed in concentration as he poured more chakra into the technique and was rewarded by the tiny space closing in more. Don't stop now, Bodai said. We've almost got her. Sure enough, the small pyramidal barrier no longer contained anything recognizable as human. All that was left was a mass of squished flesh wrapped up inside the Sannin's pink and black uniform. With a collective sigh of relief, the 3 ninja dropped their barrier and staggered back with exhaustion. No way, Kurai said. The shapeless dead mass has inexplicably begun to twitch. This is Konoha. The crushed lump of Sakura's body continued to unfurl itself before slithering across the ground with unnatural speed to wrap itself around Kurai. Her teammates were surprised into momentary inaction. Nothing had led them to anticipate that a person could survive being crushed and then retaliate in such an unusual manner. You should be dead, Kurai said. Her skin began to burn and she redoubled her efforts to escape Sakura's grasp. I won't die so easily, Sakura said. She allowed some of her bones to harden and regain their shape. And just so you know, neither will Naruto. Don't think you've won, Bodai said calmly even as he rushed in along with Kanmari. Sakura saw too late that they had charged their palms with some sort of technique. She recoiled with pain as they laid hands on her, and in the confusion Kurai managed to escape as well. Sakura completely regained her normal form and began a healing technique to repair the first real damage that she had taken since the fight began. The 2 male ninja had used some kind of ice technique that had been especially effective against her while she was channeling abilities from her slug summons. Sakura let the chakra flow into her fingertips as she regarded her wary opponents. She had been trying to disable them during the course of the battle, but thus far they had evaded her quite well. That, however, had all been part of her plan, and now it was time for her to finish them off before they realized that she was tricking them. Sakura had been afraid that her slug-like ability to resist their barrier's crushing effects would clue them into the fact that her abilities were somewhat different from those of her old master Tsunade, but so far they still seemed blissfully unaware. Whoever had decided to throw them into this mission had sent them too soon. They were talented, but they were still a long way from being able to best her. "Are you finished yet?" Maburosi asked. He delivered another set of blows to Naruto's body and was rewarded by the disappearance of the big frog that had been clinging to Naruto's torso. He had been shocked at first by the unorthodox fighting technique that utilized frog summons to enhance physical ability, but had soon gotten over it. "Not even clothes, you feather freak," Naruto retorted. Maburosi had switched from his cat-like enhancements to another set of features that resembled a rather rare type of bird. Naruto smirked as further confirmation of his theory fell into place. His old teacher would be proud. Underneath indeed. Naruto connected with Maburosi again and in the exchange of blows used the momentum to put some badly needed distance between himself and the bird man. The two frogs left clinging to his arms clamped down with their feet and withdrew their tongues for a moment. Before Maburosi could close the distance again, the toads opened wide and let loose a barrage of tongue bullets. Each toad had a small metal ball, much like a tongue ring, affixed to the end of its tongue. Once propelled at chakra-enhanced speed, the power was sufficient to punch small holes neatly through almost any surface, or ninja, which happened to get in the way. Maburosi shifted again and there was a ringing sound of metal clinking against some particularly hard surface. Naruto dodged just in time to avoid having his arms cut off as twin obsidian blades came slicing down. His toad summons, however, were not so lucky and quickly disappeared in a puff of chalky smoke. "Ah, you got careless," Naruto said as he pulled a bag out of nowhere. He always made sure that one of his summons carried spare supplies in case he were caught out without his tools, such as being forced to fight in a hospital gown. "What are you talking about?" Maburosi sneered. "I've obliterated every trick you've tried this entire time. I told you that before this fight was over I'd discover which village sent you," Naruto replied casually. "The cat, and especially that bird, narrowed it down, but those swords prove it. Only one village in the world has access to all three of those things at the same time, the rock." "Try again," Maburosi said seamlessly. Inwardly he was cursing, but there was no way he would ever let slip a reaction that would confirm the guess. "I'm not expecting you to tell me I'm right," Naruto said. "But I know I am, so there's no need to continue this fight." "You don't have a choice," Maburosi said dangerously. His eyes narrowed as he watched Naruto slip a strange-looking bracer over his forearms. "You really should have done your homework better," Naruto said. His hands began to form more seals. "I know I've got a reputation for rushing in head first, but you were just too foolish." "But, the nine tails is suppressed," Maburosi said. The amount of chakra radiating from Naruto was almost too terrible to imagine, even for a Sannin. "Did you really think I could control the nine tails as I do without approaching his level?" Naruto asked quizzically. Maburosi's grip tightened on his swords and his eyes took on the feral look of a predator. "That kind of power shouldn't be held by Konoha," Maburosi screamed as he charged Naruto. Naruto took the blows on his forearms, the bracer's chakra conducting metal easily stopping the blades, as his hands continued to form seals. The walls shattered as the piping hidden behind them tore free and coiled around Maburosi as if they were a multitude of twisting snakes. "Rasengan," Naruto called out. The swirling sphere consumed one of Maburosi's swords, but the other managed to hack the battered ninja free. He charged the sword with chakra just in time to deflect another Rasengan as Naruto pressed him. He shifted again and easily evaded Naruto's attacks as his new form granted him increased agility. "A tail," Naruto thought to himself as he tried to keep up with Maburosi's accelerated movements. "What a strange guy. I've got him," Maburosi thought exuberantly as he managed to get behind Naruto. He swung his sword, but an armored forearm parried it easily. In rage he struck out with his other fist only to have Naruto twist on his feet. The fist landed painfully in the thick mesh of spiky hair that had extended to shield Naruto's torso. Maburoshi barely escaped the hail of blonde needles that pelted the area around Naruto. It was time, Maburoshi decided unhappily as he felt Naruto molding a large amount of chakra, to retreat. His hands flashed through a few seals quickly and an instant later he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Get back, Bodai yelled. Kanmari and Kurai both dodged, but he could tell that he had been too late in comprehending the change in the pink-haired Sannin's attack strategy. 4 deep red gashes opened up along the face and torso of his 2 teammates from the razor-sharp chakra scalpel claws Sakura was using. Even worse, Kurai staggered when she landed, indicating that some of her tendons or muscles had been surgically severed. Drink this, Kanmari said as he hastily passed Kurai a small bottle. She did so and her leg regained its function, but they both knew that it would be temporary at best. I believe we've done all we can here, Bodai said, still calm. If the mission has not succeeded by now then it isn't going to. Getting captured or killed will accomplish nothing. Saying it is easy, Kanmari said. He clapped his hands together and sealed Sakura away inside 4 stone slabs that rose from the ground. An instant later the improvised prison shattered to dust under Sakura's thunderous strength. Idiot, Kurai hissed. That's a forbidden technique. We're running out of options, Kanmari said. He clapped his hands together again and sent a hail of sharp shards flying toward Sakura to slow her down. If she managed to get close to them again she'd disable them with her technique or slice them up with her chakra blades. We should have been doing this from the beginning, Bodai said. Rough stone warriors picked themselves out of the ground and charged Sakura en masse. The 3 had been fighting handicapped from the start since their best techniques all risked giving away the identity of their home village. Now, with the remaining chakra they unleashed the greatest techniques they had in an effort to escape. Still, nothing they did seemed to slow Sakura down anymore. Kurai dodged again, barely sliding by Sakura as she dug a deep footprint into the ground under the force of her momentum. She whirled, her hand slashing for a death blow when she let out a short gasp of pain and twisted in surprise at the blade digging into her back. Disperse, Maburoshi said tersely as he appeared. His 3 subordinates had no time to respond before Naruto appeared in a flash behind him and thrust a swirling typhoon of chakra into his back. Sensei, Kanmari said. His teacher didn't respond with words, but instead smiled at his 3 students. Chakra boiled up inside him for a final technique. Sakura-chan, Naruto said. He realized that Maburoshi wasn't going to be taken alive and that he likely wanted to destroy them along with himself. Sakura winced, but let Naruto pull her away from the convulsing form of the ninja that had managed to get in an unexpected blow. Don't let them get away, Sakura said. She punched the ground hard, but despite the resulting upheaval the 3 ninja completed their escape by melting away into the ground. Maburoshi had purchased his students' freedom with his life. His technique erupted into the surrounding atmosphere like a thunderbolt. Static electricity crackled as it scorched large patches of the ground. Energy continued to build up until Maburoshi's body immolated in a flash that left nothing behind for Konoha's investigatory specialists to analyze. Sakura-sama, Naruto-sama, what happened here? A baboon-faced Anbu asked. It had taken several more minutes after the end of the battle for the elite squad to make an appearance. A 4-man squad attempted to assassinate Naruto and myself, Sakura said. What happened to the guards posted at the hospital? We don't know, the man replied sheepishly. Don't know. Tsunade's loud angry voice boomed from behind him. They couldn't see the man's expression from under his mask, but his posture screamed terror at the Hokage's wrath. Lady Hokage, the Anbu stuttered as a preface to what promised to be a long-winded string of excuse-making. Sakura, don't move, Tsunade said. You either, Naruto. I could have done that, Sakura said as Tsunade began working on them. This cut is deep and close to your spine, Tsunade said. Her hands glowed with chakra as they hovered over Sakura's wound. In Naruto, you used up more chakra than is safe. You need your natural reserves as close to full as possible to regenerate your connection to the Nine Tails. I'm fine, Naruto replied, his old childish pout bubbling up to the surface momentarily. You, Anbu, go find Jiraiya. Naruto, Tsunade said sharply. No, I absolutely forbid it. We've got enough problems without inviting more. We'll invite more trouble by doing nothing, Sakura said. You know that more than anyone. Don't worry, Ba-chan, Naruto said. History isn't going to repeat itself. I hope not, Tsunade said. I don't intend to be the Hokage that presides over the next great war. As anyone who has read many of my fics can tell you, I don't tend to allow my storylines to revolve around romance, but I felt it necessary to give a strong nod to my favorite pairing and the pairing that I believe will eventually become canon. Needless to say, action with a dash of politics will continue to be the moving forces of whatever storyline I proceed with. Thanks to those who read and review, all feedback is welcome. I'm extremely busy with real life right now and with other projects, so, as usual, I have no idea when another chapter might be forthcoming. The wind caused the dust to skitter across the red, parched landscape of the middle circle that constituted the land protected by the village hidden in the rocks. A small furry animal sniffed the air uneasily as it detected a dreaded scent that spoke to unseen danger that crept on the edge of the shadows cast by great pillars of stone that dotted the terrain. With a terrified shriek, the tiny animal fled as four dark figures materialized out of thin air all around it. They were here, a ninja wearing a tiger mask said flatly. They won't be far, another, this one wearing a monkey mask, added. To think that they've come this deep into our territory though, the pigeon-masked third ninja said. You all talk too much, the fourth said dangerously. His mask was no animal, but instead something very unusual for an Anbu to wear, a deformed demon mask. Move out. The four figures shimmered away from the grisly scene they had finished inspecting. Another four-man training squad, teacher and 3 students, had been wiped out by an unseen foe that everyone knew who was, but who no one could prove, even if they had dared to. Are you too sure this is okay? Jiraiya asked. He was sitting under an outcropping of rock in its scant shade while Naruto and Sakura made themselves comfortable on a nearby rock with a mostly flat surface. You're right, Naruto said cheekily. We should all stand motionless out in the middle of a clearing somewhere. Maybe we should put on cloaks too, Sakura added. You didn't have to make fun of me, Jiraiya said, grousing slightly. Still, it made him happy to see his student finally able to enjoy himself. He wasn't sure exactly what Naruto's relationship with Tsunade's apprentice was, but he had recognized a distinct change in the pair's interaction following the attempt on Naruto's life. Jiraiya stretched silently while remaining in his relaxed position and watched them intently as they sat there talking quietly as they looked at each other with fond, mirth-filled eyes. He'd never seen them do anything overt, like kiss, while they were out on a mission. Even the best ninja could be distracted by such things if they allowed themselves to so indulge. Not to mention that such relationships, which were always known to a certain degree, were best left unadvertised when a combat situation could potentially break out at any time. There is no need to give the enemy another thing to use against you, after all. Say, Naruto, Sakura asked suddenly. They had been talking about the various techniques that each of them were working on. Long ago, for a ninja, they had both perfected their fighting styles, but now they each were attempting to push the limits of their abilities by creating new original techniques. Will you go shopping with me when we get back to Konoha? We haven't been able to relax in quite a while now. Shopping, huh? Naruto said, his eyes sparkling with humor. I guess that means I need to scour the bingo book for another bounty head, right? Baka, Sakura said, but she still grinned. Or maybe I should just ask Jiraiya to refund some of the money he took from me over the years, Naruto said, this time more loudly. You can't get blood from a stone, boy, Jiraiya shot back. Sakura laughed into the back of her hand as Naruto ranted at the aging toad hermit for a few minutes. She was also quite happy to see the blonde-haired Sannin enjoying himself with his teacher and the closest thing he had ever had to a father figure. After everything had settled down again, Jiraiya started a small fire and cooked their humble evening meal. Sometimes you're enviable, Sakura commented idly. They had eaten cup ramen again for what seemed the 100th time. Naruto, of course, was perpetually in love with the dish, but Sakura and Jiraiya were both feeling a bit burnt out. You just don't know what's good, Naruto said. He turned to his old master. Hey, old man, do you want to prepare us a place to sleep or should I? I've not got the chakra reserves I once had, Jiraiya said lightly. Plus you need the practice. It's been a long time since you could slack off with that excuse, Naruto said dryly. Nevertheless, he took a few steps back and bit his finger slightly. Kuchio's no jutsu. A dome-shaped mound of spotted amphibian flesh grew out of the ground. Naruto made a few additional hand seals and a layer of earth crept up over the strange structure. At a point directly in front of the three ninja there was a small opening that allowed entrance into the summoned structure. This place is always nicer than it should be, Sakura commented as they entered into the dimly lit room with its warm fleshy walls. She performed a series of hand seals as well to complete their preparations. Stomach of a stone toad, Naruto said. It doesn't get much homier than that. The three ninjas spread out their thin blankets and prepared to get some sleep. They were on the move so much these days that they tended to live like peasants even more than was normal for ninja on long missions. Jiraiya leaned back against the spongy but dry wall and found himself once again in a position to watch his two young comrades. They maintained a respectable distance from each other, but they were still continuing some whispered conversation about some matter that he couldn't quite decipher. He shook his head slightly. His hearing must be starting to go too. In any event, he couldn't be bothered with pondering the interactions of his idiot apprentice and the pink-haired object of Naruto's adoration. Nay, Naruto, was he always so noisy? Sakura asked. She laughed silently as Naruto scrunched up his face with distaste at Jiraiya's loud snoring. Thanks to Naruto's tenant, the blonde Sannin was a perfect physical specimen in that his body had been healed to the peak of its potential. While his smell would never match someone like Kiba, nor his eyes ever match a Sasuke, his senses were still rather formidable for that of an average human. It just gets worse, Naruto said with a mock groan. Of course, after having spent so much time with each other, neither of them were surprised by Jiraiya's disturbing habits, but one of their favorite things to do was join together in a good hearty round of complaining. Maybe when we get back you can convince Tsunade Ba-chan to give us a break, Naruto said. Sakura made a long drawn-out, hemming, noise. Baka. This was your idea after all, Sakura replied. I just said what everyone else was thinking, Naruto replied. If we weren't out here doing this, Ba-chan would have us off on something else though. With any luck tomorrow we'll finish it, Sakura said seriously. The next move will belong to them. If they decide to quit, then we'll have bought some more peace. If they decide to take retribution, Naruto said, leaving the rest unfinished. We should stay close to the village in case they decide to move in force. Perhaps, Sakura said hesitantly. She wasn't sure that waiting to take the next punch would be wise, but they didn't need to worry about a worst-case scenario yet. We'll have to deal with that if it happens. Sakura, Naruto said softly. He didn't think that they were being observed, but one could never be too careful. I know, Sakura replied back, smiling warmly at him. Good night, Naruto-kun. Good night, Sakura-chan, Naruto replied. Jiraiya snorted and turned over uncomfortably before settling back into his fitful rest. What kind of technique was used here? Pigeon Mask asked. Four tall shadowy figures stood in a loose formation as they inspected a clearing that had clearly been altered by significant amounts of chakra in some way that they were not entirely familiar with. Judging by the remnants, Demon Mask replied. It was them. This is a technique that only the great lords of summoning can bestow on their favored ties to this world. So much chakra, Tiger Mask said uncomfortably. The technique must be incredibly wasteful. The soil is permeated with chakra. Demon Mask turned around with a start as a hail of kunai flew out of thin air and turned Tiger Mask into a bloody mass of puncture wounds. Tiger Mask's body wavered and was replaced by a pillar of stone just as Tiger Mask himself stepped out of Demon Mask's shadow. All four rock ninja had assumed a defensive position as they searched for their assailants. Not too shabby, Naruto said. The ground swelled up in 3 places loosely surrounding the rock ninja. It continued to wave and shimmer for a moment before solidifying into the form of Naruto, Sakura, and Jiraiya. You've been fighting genin for too long, Tiger Mask said contemptuously. We won't let you get away with this outrage for any longer. Don't act indignant with us, Sakura retorted. You decided to play this game when you sent assassins after Konoha's Sannin. If it's any consolation, Naruto said pointedly. We intend to stop with your deaths. If it was any consolation, the three-leaf ninja would never know. The reaction of their opponents was hidden behind masks and years of training in emotional control. All 7 combatants shimmered away under chakra-enhanced speed and movement techniques that were impossible for the normal eye to follow. The surrounding landscape echoed with the sound of clashing blades, and various thrown weapons began to appear embedded in odd places as targets were missed or trajectories were altered by deflection. Jonin of the Rock, Jiraiya muttered as he appeared next to Sakura and Naruto. After their brief skirmish with the rock ninja, they found their position reversed with themselves as the surrounded party. S-class, Sakura replied softly. Ordinary Jonin would not have been able to fight against them so well, even with a slight numerical advantage. Tiger Mask suddenly performed hand seals as the other 3 launched a new round of projectile attacks. Sakura didn't move, instead relying on Naruto, who quickly moved to deflect the attack. His hair lengthened into a long spiky mass of hardened spines that encompassed both him and Sakura as he wrapped her into his arms. There was a faint sound of metal and stone clinking against the chakra-enhanced hardness of Naruto's hair, but Sakura had more important things to attend to. She donned her surgical gauntlet and extracted a large volume of noxious liquid from her body that she had produced with the help of her connection to the slugs. Go, she said forcefully as the reservoirs in the metal glove were filled and ready to disgorge their contents via the thin needle-like metal claws that were now Sakura's fingertips. Naruto spun around, his hair parting as he built momentum, until he could fling Sakura toward the nearest enemy with a great deal of force. She slipped past a desperate attack designed to fend her off and stabbed her needle claws deep into the ninja with the monkey mask. At the same time, her other hand delivered a thunderous blow to the ground which caused the terrain to break apart in a great cloud of dust and confusion. He's fast, Sakura thought as she peered through the dust and saw that a pillar of stone was hissing and bubbling as her poison melted it. Her target had used a switching technique to evade her killing blow. A hail of blonde hair flew out from behind her as Naruto shed his chakra-induced growth by turning it into a projectile attack, but the ninja in the monkey mask had already disappeared in a burst of speed. Meanwhile, Jiraiya was steadily giving up ground as he tried to deal with 2 opponents at once. Sakura-chan, Naruto said. Her eyes darted to his and understanding filled them as he moved toward Jiraiya. The white-haired Sannin disintegrated a pair of kunai and lunged forward with the twin Rasengan that he had formed. Before the rock ninja could properly react, there was a blur of pink and blonde next to the elder ninja. For a moment all 7 ninja were locked in close combat. Sakura barged forward and unleashed a barrage of deadly blows, several of which landed scraping blows on their opponents. At the same time, Naruto formed Rasengan in each of his hands as well, and along with Jiraiya surged into the loose ranks of their enemies. The danger of close combat was self-evident, and accordingly the rock ninja danced away for precious space. Get back, Jiraiya called out warningly as he felt a surge in chakra coming from their opponents. Ninpo, avatar of the golem, Monkey Mask said as his hands methodically formed seals. Kuchio's no jutsu rang out from 2 different voices just in time to obscure the field in a blindingly large cloud of smoke. Jiraiya clapped his hands together and swept the field clean with a burst of air. They couldn't afford to let their enemies attack them from behind a screen of smoke while they were standing out in the open. Amazing, Naruto said quietly as he gazed upon the giant spider that had been called to the field. Its body was brown and hairy, but he could tell that it had a thickly armored exoskeleton just beneath the hair. Its multitude of eyes swiveled in all directions to look for prey to stuff into the gaping maw of its fanged mandibles. Arguably more amazing was the other towering figure standing next to the spider. Surprisingly, it was not the other summon, but instead a mountain of earth and stone that had formed into an immense earthen armor reminiscent of the sand armor that Gaara had once used, though its shape was human in form. The remaining two ninja were perched atop the monstrous instruments of their comrades. One of them had an abnormally large, but not gigantic hawk perched on his shoulder, whilst the other appeared to be poised to launch some kind of jutsu-based attack. Naruto, you need to lead the attack, Jiraiya said. This is the proof of our caution. Right, Naruto replied. 3 cries of, Kuchio's no jutsu, rang out, this time from Konoha's side of the battle. Interesting, Gamabunta said in a booming voice as he observed the situation. To think that you would require all of us at once, interesting indeed. The ground groaned in protest as the massive weight of Gamabunta, Katsuyu, and a large destroyer toad wearing 2 swords all shifted to gain some space between each other. Katsuyu, acid, Sakura said as the frogs leapt into the air, drawing their weapons as they flew. Yes, mistress, Katsuyu said in her calm poetic voice. The giant slug issued forth a high-pressure stream of acidic fluid toward the immense spider summon, only to see the tiger-masked ninja defend with a large wall of stone. From over the wall the spider scurried with alarming quickness toward Sakura and Katsuyu. The monkey-masked ninja used his giant earthen armor to support the spider's advance by hurling immense boulders gouged from the ground toward Katsuyu. Sakura swung an arm back in preparation to defend from the onslaught. Fire release. Toad oil flame bullet, Naruto called out an instant before a sheet of flame erupted across the battlefield between Katsuyu and the great spider. Earth release. Underworld swamp, Jiraiya said. The earth beneath the spider and the monkey-masked ninja instantly sloshed into a mire of swampland. Unfortunately, neither the spider nor the earthen giant was even slightly affected. The spider's many hair legs dispersed its weight sufficiently for it to walk on top of the thick swamp, and the earthen giant seemed able to extend its considerable bulk through the trap down to the solid ground beneath it. However, the fire had been somewhat successful in slowing down the attack, and that was all the time that Jiraiya's destroyer toad needed to position itself in front of Katsuyu. Twin blades came free from the toad's back and sliced through the incoming boulders hurled by the stone giant. Under Jiraiya's direction, the toad destroyer settled back on its haunches and let loose a barrage of water bullets. The tightly packed balls of chakra enforced water jetting across the still burning landscape toward the enemy summons, only to be swatted from the sky. A great earthen dragon coiled around the spider and opened its mouth for another attack. A torrent of mud drawn from Jiraiya's swamp filled the air with a thick mist of blinding muck. Jiraiya and Sakura were just wiping the miry substance from their eyes when a hail of stone spikes came whistling through the screen of mud toward their direction. Earth release. Earth dragon bullet, Naruto yelled. A second hail of projectiles intercepted and annihilated those fired by the rock ninja. Gamabunta, I've got to do something about that stone giant. Quite right, Gamabunta replied. It's just like the old days again, my boy. Naruto performed a hand seal and then disappeared from Gamabunta's head. A few moments later he appeared amidst the chaos near the thin part of the stone giant where the monkey-masked ninja had embedded himself. Even through the mask, Naruto could see the man's surprised reaction as the blonde appeared just a few feet away. Fire release. Fire dragon flame bullet, Naruto intoned as he inhaled and blew fire. A split second before the searing blasts would have hit the vulnerable ninja controlling the massive giant of earth, the summoned hawk blew the inferno away with several powerful gusts from its wings. Without ceremony, Naruto found himself locked in hand-to-hand combat with the pigeon-masked ninja, but the man's technique was nothing like that which he had previously faced. With the hawk continually swooping, flinging feathers, and raking Naruto with its talons, the blonde Sannin found himself pressed to maintain his tenuous position on the side of the earth giant. Rasengan, Naruto said as he tried to land the swirling sphere of chakra onto his nimble opponent. Spikes erupted from the earthen giant and Naruto realized that the monkey-masked ninja was aiding his ally. At the same time the hawk stooped, wings bent, and plowed into Naruto's exposed side. The wings were clearly enhanced by chakra because the lucky blow gouged out a deep wound in Naruto's side. Naruto's Rasengan tore a huge cylindrical hole into the shoulder of the earthen giant that they were standing astride. The momentum from his attack's impact tossed Naruto aside just in time to dodge a cross attack from the hawk and its summoner that would have probably left him severely wounded. "You guys," Naruto growled. He made a series of one-handed seals as his eyes began to turn a slight shade of red. His flesh churned and healed at a visible rate while Naruto calculated his next attack. "Jiraiya, be more careful," Sakura admonished sharply as she applied a healing technique to the aging Sannin's hand. Jiraiya had used the speed of his destroyer toad to close in on the spider and had managed to engage the demon-masked ninja in hand-to-hand combat. In exchange for his efforts, the tiger-masked ninja had gotten the drop on him and sliced his wrist open, severing tendons and effectively ending Jiraiya's ability to form two-handed seals. "You almost sound worried, Sakura-chan," Jiraiya said gruffly. He flexed his injured limb. "That's enough for now, I can form seals again." "Katsuyu," Sakura said warningly. An oversized net of steel-like silk had suddenly appeared directly over them. The giant slug broke apart into hundreds of tiny segments. "Wah!" Jiraiya said, cutting off as they sped away. "Hang on," Sakura replied. They were riding one of Katsuyu's surprisingly fast components down a slope of other tiny slugs like some kind of strange surfers. Sakura began making seals and the slugs behind them organized themselves. One slug would grip another so that it could be flung through the air violently toward the spider. Explosions began rocking the landscape as a rain of acid-bloated slug bodies began to impact all around the giant spider, but due to its slender form and unnatural quickness very few of the bombs managed to hit it. The slugs continued to endlessly subdivide themselves though, so the bombardment worked well as a distraction and as a tool for keeping the spider at distance, even if Sakura's latest tactic wouldn't land a knockout blow. Sakura turned her head away as a huge body suddenly blocked out the sun for a split second before landing with a fierce blast of displaced air right in front of the giant spider. Gamabunta, his short blade drawn, had abandoned Naruto and leapt across the battlefield to go head-on with the only other summon on the field that was as large and powerful as himself. "Gokuraku," Gamabunta said menacingly. "Don't think I've forgiven you." "Gamabunta," Gokuraku replied. "That should be my line." Gamabunta reeled back as four legs came crashing down on him. With his movement limited, Gokuraku lifted up the weight of his body and thrust with his fangs to impale his victim's thick hide. At the last second, Sakura and Jiraiya appeared on Gamabunta's back. With a strained grunt of effort, Sakura wound back and delivered a full-powered punch upward into one of the descending poison-filled fangs. "My fang!" Gokuraku shrieked. The demon-masked ninja, which had up until this point been defending his creature, decided that it was time to take affirmative action. "Watch out," Jiraiya said as the demon mask appeared in their midst. The two Sannin leapt apart, but not before he narrowly missed grabbing Sakura by her hair. "This is dangerous," Sakura thought as she came to a rest further down on Gamabunta's head. They still didn't really know everything that the demon-masked ninja was capable of. "I'll leave him to you," Jiraiya called out. A three-headed earth dragon technique had erupted from the ground around them and was threatening to do serious damage to the destroyer toad. Gamabunta was still locked in combat with the partially disabled Gokuraku, but he had the advantage now that his foe only possessed one functioning fang. "Katsuyu," Sakura said as she formed seals. Slugs began converging on a position close to Gamabunta, piling on top of each other until Katsuyu had reformed herself. The slug's massive bulk flopped down on top of the spider summon, pinning it. Sakura used the opportunity to jump from her location on Gamabunta to the spider so that she could close in on the demon mask. What is this? Sakura said. She had felt this before, this sensation of her limbs no longer obeying her commands. Just like when she had teamed up with Chiyo-ba-sama. Master technique. Blood of the Bound, demon mask intoned. He held up a tiny doll wrapped around with a few strands of pink hair. No! Sakura shouted as she was propelled toward Katsuyu, look out! Katsuyu, already exhausted from subdividing herself so many times, exploded in a thick cloud of white smoke as Sakura buried her fist into her spongy body. Sakura turned around, her face livid, only to crumple in pain from the demon-masked ninja's manipulation of the doll. Despite the fire burning through her limbs, Sakura propelled herself forward, much to the shock of her opponent, and landed a blow squarely in his torso. Though the extreme pain that she was in prevented the punch from containing the full potential of her power, it nonetheless knocked the ninja off of Gokuraku's back. Sakura looked back toward Jiraiya for a moment before following her prey. Keep it up, Bunta-sama, Jiraiya muttered. Gokuraku had somehow wrapped his brittle-looking legs up around Gamabunta such that the two of them were trapped against each other in a battle of strength. Sparks flew as Gokuraku's remaining fangs scrapped against Gamabunta's blade. Jiraiya looked up at the towering chakra-animated beast before him. That guy in the tiger mask, Jiraiya concluded, was some kind of jutsu prodigy to be able to create a beast of that size and maintain it against an actual summon for so long. The destroyer toad expertly sidestepped a biting attack and swung its blades into the stony neck of the dragon to no effect. I'm going to have to take this thing down myself, Jiraiya thought. He gave the signal to jump and relied on his loyal summon to take him into the heart of the earth dragon. The sickening sound of steel on stone echoed all around him as he finally pinpointed the location of his opponent and jumped from the destroyer toad onto the enemy's technique. Jiraiya inhaled deeply and spat out dozens of tiny water pellets toward the tiger-masked ninja. Part of the dragon's body was manipulated into an impromptu wall that blocked the attacks partially, but several managed to punch through. Jiraiya's Rasengan finished demolishing the rest of the wall and then he was in hand-to-hand combat once again. As the battle between Toad and Dragon continued around them, the two ninja dueled on the ever-shifting platform that had become their battlefield. Blast! Jiraiya said as a hail of obsidian shards pelted his body. He could tell that he had taken enough damage to kill a normal ninja, let alone a normal human. But he, the legendary Toad Hermit, was far from normal. During the attack he had pressed his opponent such that they now stood on the juncture where the three heads of the Earth Dragon technique were joined with the main body. It appears that I become a legend today, Tiger Mask said, finally breaking his silence as he prepared to finish Jiraiya. The white-haired Sannin smirked. Cho-Odama Rasengan, Jiraiya said as the large tempest of chakra formed in his hand. He darted forward, blood pouring from agitated wounds, and delivered his final technique. Where are you aiming, old man? Tiger Mask asked. Behind you, Jiraiya said. A long stone spike had sprouted from the middle of his chest, but his technique had done its work. Stone protested as the dragon's core was churned up into an expanding vortex of chakra. The tiger-masked ninja realized his peril, but it was too late. He was ed into the swirling ball of destruction along with Jiraiya and his technique. With a painful squawk, the great hawk summoned by the pigeon-masked ninja fell from the sky and hit the ground with a thud before evaporating back into the white smoke it had appeared from. Kunai bombs thrown by Naruto had filled the sky with so many dagger-like projectiles that even the ninja bird had been unable to take them all without leaving itself open for additional attacks. Written technique. Body of air, Pigeon Mask said. His fingers elongated into bird-like talons and the rest of his body took on superficial aspects of a bird. The monkey-masked ninja, who had been effectively out of the larger battle in his efforts to support his comrade, was beginning to get frustrated. Get him off of me, Monkey Mask said tersely as the battle neared the point where he was embedded in his technique. We're beginning to lose the advantage. Naruto stepped through the swirling morass of muck that the monkey-masked ninja was manipulating in an attempt to throw him off balance when it solidified around him unexpectedly. He began forming hand seals, dodging determinedly as the pigeon-masked ninja closed in. Hidden technique. Naruto began. The terrain shifted randomly and instead of dodging another blow, Naruto felt talons biting into his arm. He pumped chakra into his legs and tore himself free of the earthen bindings that had ensnared him, but at the same time it allowed the pigeon-masked ninja to get sufficient leverage to completely tear his arm away at the shoulder. Great! Naruto thought as he was sent flying away. He spat out a small ball of fire and crushed it into the hole where his arm had been previously so as to staunch the freely flowing blood. Even his tenant wouldn't be able to heal such a wound, at least not in the condition he was currently in. He hadn't wanted to use this technique with his chakra reserves nearly depleted, but the battle had gone on long enough. It was time to bring things to a close. Secret technique. Flowering Sakura. Model Aegis, Naruto called out. Pink-tinted chakra flowed out of his right wrist and formed a circular shield that looked as if it were made out of many tiny cherry blossom petals. He leapt to one side to avoid the crashing fist of the earthen giant, which was now free to unleash its full potential. The boulder-strewn landscape was being ground down to sand under the onslaught of a veritable moving mountain. Wind release. Spiraling shuriken, Naruto said as he crouched down and used some last bits of chakra to hurl himself back into the sky. A ponderous fist rose in an attempt to knock him back down, but his technique ground through it effortlessly. The immense earthen armor had no chance of avoiding its fate as the hammer blow of the spiraling shuriken tore through its lateral axis. The shockwave tossed Naruto, the pigeon-masked ninja, and the tiger-masked ninja aside like leaves buffeted about on a bitter fall wind. Naruto, Gamabunta said heavily. He had at last managed to dispel his opponent, but it was at the cost of most of his strength. You're becoming as bad as Jiraiya. If you don't end this before it gets any more out of hand, then I'll deal with you myself. With that, Gamabunta vanished away with a puff of smoke back to where he came from along with his underling, who had also expended the time allotted to him by Jiraiya's summoning. The scarred battlefield now had none left standing except Sakura and the demon-masked ninja. Come, Demon Mask said with a strained voice. Normally his power, which was a mix of mind techniques and physical puppetry, was uncontested once it settled onto a victim. The pink-haired Sannin was proving to be much more challenging as she fought his control every step of the way. He liberally poured chakra into his doll to maintain his control and to cause the young woman to come closer to her doom. With his free hand he gripped a kunai, with the amount of power and concentration it took to keep dominance over Sakura's struggling form. He couldn't afford to do anything more than stab her heart and end it quickly. Careless, Sakura said as she felt the blade run through her chest. The demon-masked ninja felt a slight sting and looked to where one of the needle tips on her gauntlet had pricked his skin. Doesn't matter, Demon Mask said as his world began to spin. We've defeated the Sannin. You mean you never noticed? Sakura asked. Only it wasn't Sakura anymore. Her image had been replaced by a black-haired young ninja wearing a rock headband. What is this? Demon Mask said groggily as he pushed the heavy weight of a comrade he had thought recently deceased away from him. The one-armed body of Naruto and the impaled corpse of Jiraiya likewise shimmered into rock ninja that had been presumed dead after going missing in combat. You underestimated us, Naruto said, his voice echoing from the empty air around them. Thanks to that you wasted your power fighting our Shouten no Jutsu. You won't destroy my village, Demon Mask said. The poison had nearly killed him, but through sheer will he held on. No, we won't, Jiraiya said. We were telling the truth earlier. Your team is the last to get evidence that we were responsible, and so if the Rock commits no more acts of aggression against Konoha, then we will end it. The treaty will stand. Without evidence there is no honorable basis for a war, Sakura said. She didn't think that the demon-masked ninja had heard her though. The speed of her poison was well known to her after all. Take their bodies, Naruto said. I'm sure there's much we can learn from them. I'll prepare a scroll, Jiraiya said. He breathed out a sigh of relief as Naruto and Sakura finished off the remaining ninja. That technique had required a much larger percentage of his chakra than either of them had dedicated to it, and he was exhausted. Ah, Namikaze, Jiraiya thought as he watched Naruto move. I wish you were here now, but I'm glad enough just the same. Hey Jiraiya, are you ready yet? Naruto yelled back. Yes, yes, bring them over here, Jiraiya said, his thoughts dispersing. There were still many things that he wanted to say, but for now it appeared as if they just might escape war and get rocked to observe its treaty. That would be enough. Sakura scrutinized herself in her mother's full-length mirror to make sure that her hair wasn't being stifled by her headband before smoothing out her clothes one last time. She thought about getting her pack but decided that it wasn't necessary to lug excessive tools around in the middle of Konoha. When will you be back, dear? Sakura's mother asked from the other room as Sakura made her way toward the front door. I don't know, Mom, Sakura replied lightly. I'm going to go shopping with Naruto-kun. I won't make you anything for lunch then, echoed back as Sakura slipped through the door. She still enjoyed staying with her mother, and due to her travel-heavy life she had never bothered with the unnecessary expense of getting her own apartment. Sakura walked down the streets of Konoha, which was still in the midst of its early morning wake-up. Traveling merchants were starting to filter into the streets, and the shops that were not already opening were preparing to. Many of the single operators were sweeping their steps or putting out street displays in an effort to entice shoppers inside. Sakura-sama, someone said in friendly greeting. Sakura smiled prettily and waved to those who took time to say hello. She was always slightly embarrassed by the level of reverence that some of the civilians paid to her just for walking by. Sakura-chan, Naruto's voice called out. She turned around and waited for her energetic blonde to catch up to her. You look happy today. Of course, Sakura said. I'm on vacation with you and I can't think of anything more perfect right now. Naruto looked at her for a moment and then practically beamed with one of his widest smiles, which was saying a lot considering how many times she'd seen him smile. So where do you want to go? Naruto asked. They had begun walking slowly toward the center of the village where many of the nicer stores were located. I'm feeling a little nostalgic today, Sakura said. She pointed up to a sign that read, Grass of the Field. I don't remember ever going in here, Naruto said idly as they went inside. You're kidding, Sakura replied. I used to love this place when I was little, but they've got some things for adults too. Do they have clothing rated for ninja use? Naruto asked. No, Baka, Sakura said. Well, they might have one item that she was thinking of in particular that could be suited to ninja utilization. However, they do have the best selection from Fire, Wave, and Grass Country. Ah, I see, Naruto said. He casually felt of the soft fabrics on a pair of rather loud-looking pants. Where on earth did you get your clothes from if you didn't come here? Sakura asked again, preoccupied with a selection of belts. Well, I got a clothing allowance for a while, Naruto said uncomfortably. But that stuff was always dropped off. Then by the time I entered the academy I started wearing ninja-rated clothes pretty much exclusively. Right, Sakura said. She fumed at herself inwardly. Naruto had told her all these things before. Why hadn't she been paying closer attention to what she was asking him? It wasn't like she was hanging out with Ino. I didn't mind, Naruto said, as if reading her thoughts. I can be careless sometimes, Sakura said softly. She reached out and took Naruto's hand into her own. I'm thankful for the past that built this present, Naruto replied with an equally soft tone. You know that you can say anything to me, Sakura-chan. Baka, Sakura muttered out of his earshot. She knew that, but she didn't want to say anything to ruin their good mood today. Unfortunately, the disruptions didn't seem to be over. As quickly as they had moved on to lighter subjects, the owner of the store, an elderly woman named Miyatio, glided in seemingly from nowhere to inquire about whether they were finding everything. Sakura-sama, Naruto-sama, you honor my humble shop, Miyatio said. You do us too much credit, Owner-san, Naruto replied. Please, Naruto-sama, call me Miyatio, Miyatio said. As she turned to Sakura, her eyes flitted down briefly to take in the sight of the two young Sannin holding hands. It is so good to see you again, child. I had missed your visits. It's good to see you again as well, Miyatio-san, Sakura replied. The clothing was loosely organized by gender, and so Sakura slowly drifted away from Naruto after giving him strict instructions to pick out some nice evening clothes for himself. She considered making his choices for him, considering the orange atrocity that he had worn when he was younger, but in the end determined that his selections should reflect his own personality rather than her taste. Sakura-sama, Miyatio said. She had unexpectedly appeared next to Sakura, which was somewhat impressive even though Sakura had almost completely dropped her guard. Please, Miyatio-san, Sakura said, smiling softly. There's no need for the sama between old friends, is there? Perhaps not, Sakura-chan, Miyatio replied. Her face took on a rather reflective look as if the old woman were considering something distant. She seemed to realize Sakura was studying her. I just got lost in the past for a minute. You remind me of someone. I know I've got a temper, but I'm really not that much like Tsunade, Sakura said only to be cut off. I didn't mean Tsunade-sama, Miyatio said. Your mannerism, you increasingly remind me of the third. The third? Sakura repeated, startled. Yes, somewhat, Miyatio said. Her eyes flicked over to where Naruto was for a moment before focusing on Sakura again. I've watched you for a long time now, Sakura-san. But that is not the reason I wanted to talk to you. Really? Sakura asked. She had not missed the quick movement of Miyatio's gaze. And what is that? Miyatio said, looking down and to the side slightly. Her face appeared to take on a great weariness. I wanted to ask you about Naruto-sama. What about him? Sakura asked, blushing slightly. She saw us holding hands, Sakura thought, or maybe she's heard those rumors about Tsunade-sensei announcing her successor soon. He really isn't a demon, is he? Miyatio asked, her voice barely a whisper. Sakura felt a splash of cold water immerse her spine. Hadn't everyone figured it out that Naruto was the demon's jailer years ago? Wasn't he the village's hero now? I've known this for some time, Miyatio admitted. But I couldn't believe it even when everyone else did. Why couldn't you believe it? Sakura asked, trying not to let any disbelief or bitterness seep into her voice. After everything that Naruto has done for us all. After everything he's done for me, was the unvoiced addition to her statement. When the nine tails was sealed away by the fourth, we were told by those who knew the lore of the tailed beasts that no human shell could ever contain the power of the greatest demon, Miyatio said. We had no reason to doubt them, even later, even when he seemed like a little boy, the nine tails was a deceiver, we had no reason to doubt. Why are you telling me these things? Sakura asked. It pained her to know how Naruto had been shunned in the past, but he had put it behind him and she wanted to as well. You are a Sannin, Miyatio replied. All of Konoha reveres those who have achieved that title as the strongest of ninja, but more than strength is the great knowledge that breathed life into that strength and the wisdom to use it effectively. Please tell me, should I have doubted the things that were said? Sakura said, then paused for a moment. It was true, and her own experiences testified to the fact that those who housed the tailed demons rarely remained themselves. Gaara was driven to murderous near insanity much earlier due to his treatment, but eventually his tenant would have eroded his mind and consumed him. Only those humans with extraordinary abilities and strong wills could become the master rather than the mastered. You were not wrong. Miyatio seemed to sag visibly with relief, but Sakura wasn't done with her. But you were not right either, she said. Those who possess the tailed beasts are not predestined to succumb to their influence, even if they are a young child. Strength of will, training, and their own power can enable them to harness the liability as their tool. I see, Miyatio said. She looked away again, downcast. The third knew this as well, Sakura said. You should have listened to him. His relationship with the fourth, everyone thought that his bias, that his words were too suspicious, Miyatio said, rambling slightly. Are you okay? Sakura asked as the old woman seemed to lose more of her composure by the minute. I'm sorry I troubled you, dear, Miyatio said determinedly. You didn't need an old lady's problems. I've been too selfish. Miyatio-san, please, why does this bother you so? Sakura asked gently. These things are all long past now. I watched Naruto-sama with suspicious eyes and thus was witness to many cruel things, Miyatio replied. There were some that kept him from wandering, when he was quite small, by hitting him if he went into a part of the village where he was not meant to go. Some threw stones. You did these things as well? Sakura asked, already knowing the answer. I can never apologize, Miyatio said. How does one apologize for such a thing? Naruto-kun, Sakura said. You don't bear any ill will, do you? Miyatio looked around, startled, as Naruto seemed to appear from thin air next to Sakura. His smile wasn't a fake one, but it wasn't energetic either. I don't remember you throwing anything at me, Miyatio-san, Naruto said softly. I don't think that any of the people who threw stones at me are here in Konoha anymore. No, of course not, Miyatio said emotionally. She understood Naruto's sentiment. As far as he was concerned, none of it had ever happened. It was all overlooked. Blotted out. I guess I should have told you that Naruto and I are rarely far enough apart not to be aware of what is happening with the other, Sakura said. The senses of one able to acquire the title of Sannin reached far, even for a ninja. I do believe I've outshopped you, Naruto said, changing the subject abruptly. Sakura looked down at the 2 articles of clothing she had compared to the nearly half-dozen Naruto had picked out for himself. I guess so, Sakura said, laughing slightly. She eyed his selections and decided that she couldn't have done much better herself. Don't you dare tell Ino. Please, come back anytime, Miyatio said earnestly as she accepted their payment. She didn't even bother to attempt to trivialize or acknowledge the past by offering to let them shop on the house. We would love to, Miyatio-san, Naruto said, smiling like his old self again. I'm sorry you had to hear all of that, Sakura said once they were back out on the street. Secretly she wondered how many people who now greeted Naruto with great formality and honor as their protector had once abused him. Don't be, Naruto said firmly. The time was long past him being bothered by the torments that had plagued his childhood. Be happy for today, okay? Sakura smiled and nodded happily. Together they continued walking the streets of Konoha, sampling the many things that it had to offer to anyone enjoying a day of leisure. At the end of the journey the sun was beginning to set over Konoha and the young couple found themselves at Sakura's door. You're coming in, Sakura said sternly. She held the door open for a sheepish Naruto. I don't want to impose, Naruto said politely. It isn't an imposition, Sakura replied. My mom loves it when you visit. I haven't seen her in a while, Naruto acknowledged. I hope that poor Naruto-kun isn't too tired to stay for our evening meal, Haruno-san said. Sure enough, a variety of enticing smells were filling the small flat where Sakura lived with her mother. He's never too tired to eat, Mom, Sakura said jokingly. Then come in and sit down, Haruno-san said warmly. It made her very happy that her daughter seemed to have finally found the things that she wanted in life, both personal and professional. So did you two have a fun day? You bet, Naruto said enthusiastically. It was a nice change of pace, Sakura added. They continued to make small talk throughout their meal. Sakura finished early and excused herself for a moment. What's this? Naruto asked when she dropped a small shopping bag down in front of him. Well, I had planned to give this to you later, but I decided there was no point to wait, Sakura said. Go ahead and try it on. It's a coat, Naruto said. It is rated for ninja use too, Sakura said. She nodded with appreciation as Naruto slung the well-fitted garment over his shoulders. Oh my, Haruno-san said. What? Naruto asked. Here, come look in the mirror, Sakura told him. The three went into the small adjoining room where the full-length looking glass stood. It's uncanny, isn't it? Haruno-san said. I thought so, Sakura said. When I saw the style, I remembered the pictures in the history books we had to read back in the academy. It's just like what my father used to wear, Naruto said quietly. The long flowing fabric was a mix between a cloak and an overcoat. It was decorated with tendrils of flame licking at the bottom, and while it was light enough to billow out, it was stiff enough to resist entangling its wearer. Thank you, Sakura-chan, it's amazing. I'll always wear it. Haruno-san was about to comment on the sappy way that her daughter and the blonde were looking at each other when the two of them suddenly stiffened. Green eyes met blue as they both took out summoning scrolls. Somewhere in the shadows of Konoha, a tiny slug and frog backed away from the darkness that slid through the empty streets. What's wrong? Haruno-san asked with alarm. She knew that the senses of the Sannin reached far, even by the standards of a ninja. It's time, Naruto said simply. Mom, we've got to go, Sakura said. It's him, isn't it? Haruno-san asked with resignation. Please don't worry, Sakura said. Her pack had appeared out of nowhere and Sakura unconsciously affixed it to her belt. If anything happens, I love you, Mom. Sakura, Haruno-san said anxiously, her eyes glistening, but the pair before her was already gone as if they had never existed. Would you like another glass, Tsunade? Jiraiya asked. Please, Tsunade replied. She looked at the white-haired toad hermit fondly as he poured up the last of their sake. So, tell me, Jiraiya said. Did I learn my lesson well? I will inform Naruto that he is a very good teacher, Tsunade said teasingly. Of course he had a good student, even if it was an old dog. We can't all develop talents like yours, Haim, Jiraiya said with a laugh. Oh Jiraiya, Tsunade said lightly. Remind me why we didn't do this years ago. Jiraiya said. If I did that, then you might hit me, and I don't think I could take one of your punches right now. Tsunade laughed merrily, and a moment later Jiraiya joined in. The two elder Sannin were leaning back in matching chairs in Tsunade's office. They had told the council that they had important strategic matters to attend to or something like that. Jiraiya, you remember that time when the old man played that trick on you? Tsunade asked. She continued when Jiraiya didn't reply and she realized how vague her question had been. You know, the one with the barrel of monkeys when. Oh, right, that was his, going away, gift when. Jiraiya cut off when Tsunade unexpectedly jumped across the short distance from her chair to his. For a split second Jiraiya went into super pervert mode as Tsunade was pressed against him, but his mirth turned to horror when he realized what was happening. Jiraiya, Tsunade mouthed silently. Blood was gushing from between her lips. Even muddled with drink, Jiraiya still managed to quickly pull her away from where they were deeper into the dark office. I'll kill you, Jiraiya snarled into the empty space. Tsunade had just saved him from death, but all Jiraiya could think was that the price had been too high. A blade appeared through his shoulder and pain blossomed through the toad hermit's body. You, Jiraiya said. He had slumped against the wall, his arms cradling Tsunade's bleeding form protectively. What do you think you're doing, brat? Trimming the fat, the dark figure replied flatly. His blade came up, crackling with energy, and swung toward the pair with economical deadliness. The blade sliced clean through both Jiraiya and Tsunade, but an instant later the pair disappeared in a cloud of smoke. It's been a long time, Naruto said as he appeared behind the dark figure along with Sakura. The only answer was the scream of a jutsu and the sound of the office's wall being demolished. Rooftops flew by as pursuer and pursued raced toward the edge of the village. Then rooftops turned to trees and before long all three parties were deep in the gathering darkness of the great forest surrounding Konoha. Then, with all the abruptness of the beginning of the chase, the dark figure stopped. Well, a voice said condescendingly. You seem to have picked up some trash on your way back. I was thinking that it's about time we ended all this, Naruto called out. Sakura glanced at him and noted that Naruto's expression was becoming more fox-like by the minute, just like the last time. And what, pray tell, is that? The voice asked. From the tree branch that the dark figure was standing on, another figure began to emerge and take shape. Through the darkness, one last ray of sunlight managed to reach into the forest. "You're mine, Orochimaru," Naruto growled. "You're not worth Orochimaru-sama's time, Dobi," Sasuke said, finally breaking his silence. "These eyes have already taken your measure." "Interesting," Orochimaru said, his tongue flicking out as if to taste the air. "I think I'll let you play around a bit." Sasuke indulged in a small smile and twisted his blade in anticipation. The distinctive appearance of his Sharingan eyes seemed to glow large, even in the dusk. "I'll handle Sasuke," Sakura said sharply. She had donned her surgical gauntlets and made a rather ominous clicking sound with the metal tips. "You kill the snake. Today we Sannin will clean up our mess once and for all." "I already told you," Sasuke said tersely. "I won't allow it." "You won't have a choice," Sakura replied. Her green eyes seemed to bore into his body mercilessly. "This time you're coming back to Konoha even if I have to break every bone in your body." "And the time has arrived." Sakura vs. Sasuke. Naruto